What's going on, guys? This is John and welcome back to the channel. The current PC market is better than ever and you can find cheap new cards such as the 1050 Ti and RX 580 and other entry-level GPUs anywhere from $130 to $170 at the time of uploading. Some cards even come with a game or two or an Xbox Game Pass. And if you look on the used market, you can find the same GPUs for up to and sometimes even more than $50 less. But what about a card that is nearly 10 years old? How well does a 10-year-old card perform against the top 5 esports in 2020? Let's check it out. Today on the bench, we have the GIGABYTE GTX 460 1GB. With its launch at $229 in July of 2010, the GTX 460 dominated the $200 card market, aimed for the higher end entry-level GPU market. On Team Red, the main competition would have been the ATI HD 5830 and 5850. Oh, and I will be giving this card away at the end of the video, so stay tuned. Out of the box, the GIGABYTE card is overclocked from the stock 675 MHz to 715 MHz. I will do 2 rounds of testing, one at out of the box settings and one with a manual overclock applied. I was actually able to get a nice stable overclock to 850 MHz core clock and 2000 MHz memory clock. So for these tests, we will be looking strictly at gaming performance versus synthetics to get a grasp of real-world performance. The games we'll be testing are CSGO, PUBG, League of Legends, and Fortnite. I had also planned to do Apex Legends, but unfortunately the game would crash on launch and I was not able to get that solved for some reason. So all games will be played at 1080p, 100% 3D resolution aka scaling, with quality settings depending on what the game will run decently at. Now let's take a look at the bench. This test bench is made for legacy and budget hardware reviews. It consists of one of the heavyweight champs of 2011, the i5 2500K overclocked to 4.0, and I'm cooling that with the Hyper 212 Evo. We also have 16 gigs of HyperX Fury DDR3, 120 OCZ SSD paired with the Cooler Master 800 watt Silent Gold Pro PSU, which is capable of pushing energy to both the CPU and GPU, which surprisingly has 2 6-pin power connectors. All gameplay and testing footage will be recorded directly from the GPU into an external capture card on a separate system to lower the possibility of performance degradation from screen capture software. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so first up we have CSGO. Now, running this game was actually no issue for the card since this game can basically run on any system, which makes it a great esports title. The game selected medium settings as our quality. Looking at the non-overclocked results, the card maintained an average of 112.6 frames per second throughout the test with the minimum of 6 frames per second. And if you look at the max FPS numbers, they do look a bit off, and that's just going to be because, sometimes you'll get FPS spikes when you look up into the sky or at loading screens. So take this number with a grain of salt for this and the next results. And now switching over to the overclocked results, with a nice push of only 135 MHz to the core clock and 200 MHz to the memory clock, we saw an average increase of 19 frames per second, going from 112.6 on out-of-the-box settings to 131.6 frames per second on our manual overclock. 1% low also jumped up from 53 frames per second to 60.4 frames per second, making the frame drops a bit more bearable. Overall, the overclocked pushed the numbers a bit more and increased my performance by 16% across the average frame rates. Alright, so now moving on to PUBG, things do start to get a little bit choppy. With our out-of-the-box overclock, PUBG selected very low as the graphics quality level. After load into the waiting lobby, the graphics were pretty much unplayable. There was a continuous frame drop and stutter, as you can see here. I averaged about 32 frames per second throughout the game, with frame rates increasing when looking at the sky or when there wasn't that much to render. When jumping out of an airplane, the game did drop frames as it was too much to render for the card. On the overclocked run, we did see an 18% increase in performance across the board, and while our maximum frame rate dropped, our 1% load did increase from 10 frames per second to 23 frames per second, making those frame drops more bearable. Overall, the game performed the worst on this card. Next, we have League of Legends, a game that is not very demanding at all. Now, at first I didn't know what to expect, only knowing that these games were made to run on basically anything to increase the player count. I was pleasantly surprised with the performance results I got. So looking at the out of the box performance again, we see an average of 197.2 frames per second during gameplay, with a max of 302 frames per second and a 1% low of 130.3 frames per second. There really wasn't any issue running this game at all. And a quick look at the overclocked results, we see that the average jumped from 197.2 frames per second to 244.2 frames per second, a 23.8% increase across the board. Finally, we get to Fortnite. Now I don't really play Fortnite, but man, I did have fun playing the 2 times that I was testing this. My first game on, I had 4 kills only to lose when I ran out of bullets. Is that good? I don't know. Anyways, let's get to the results. With out of the box settings, I had an average of 72.9 frames per second, with a 1% low of 47.2 frames per second and a 0.1% low of 0.2 frames per second. Pretty bad frame drops, but this was only apparent when doing something that required a lot of render or jumping out from the bus. Also, while playing the game, there was this weird glitch or rendering issue, or something that looked like a bush was following over me as I walked around. You can see it in this clip right here. Anyways, the problem seemed to go away when I came back on the overclocked run, so it might have been of a one-off bug. Looking at the overclocked results, we did see an average of 83.2 frames per second with a 1% low of 55.4 frames per second and a 0.1% low of 21.2 frames per second. That's a pretty huge difference when comparing the non-overclocked results. The extra 12 frames per second brought our gain to 14.1% increase in performance on the overclock. So in conclusion, are these games playable? Oh yes. Will you have a good time playing them? That will be up to your discretion, obviously. If you think that you can handle playing these games at these frame rates that you just saw, then yeah, this is totally playable. And if you have this card laying around, I would totally say go ahead and use it. Should you go out and buy the next GTX 460 you see on eBay or another used marketplace? Well, no. Firstly, as previously mentioned, if you are in the used market for a GPU upgrade, you can score great deals on 1050s, RX 570s, and other newer cards that will perform marginally better than the GTX 460. But what if the card is a hand-me-down, or one of your buddies lets you borrow the card until you upgrade to something newer or better? Then this card will perform good enough for certain games. I would try to stay away from PUBG and any games that will require a pretty big amount of rendering. Secondly, why else shouldn't you go out and buy this card right away? Because I'm giving away this card to one lucky subscriber at 1,000 subs. All that you have to do is subscribe to the channel and like the video. Seriously, that's it. I will be giving away a graphics card of my choosing every time I hit 2,000 or more subscribers. Meaning, I'll be giving away one at 1,000 subs, another one at 3,000 subs, and so on and so forth. So if you want to win a great card to give to your little brother or just to have a spare, just drop a like and subscribe to the channel. You'll be entered in the giveaway. And as always, if you like this video and want to see more content like this soon, get subscribed and I'll see you next time. Peace.